Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you are watching my walkthrough for Chrono Trigger for Nintendo DS. Towards the end of the game, you can do various side quests, one for each one of the characters in our party, so this particular video is going to be covering Robo's side quest, which is leading us to Geno Dome, which is in 2300 AD. So head over there, and this particular scene, if you speak with Robo at the end of time, he'll give you a reminder of some of the things that Gasper, the Guru of Time, said. It's reminding him that there is the birthplace of machines, there's something going on there. So what we want to do is go to 2300 AD, go to Geno Dome, which is in the island for the far bottom right using the Epic, and then you have to have Robo in your party to interact with this control console here. As soon as you do, a voice will then call out to Robo and explains that it knows him and such, and it explains that all the flesh and blood creatures are doomed on this planet and they should all be destroyed, which is not ominous in the slightest. Next, the door will open and we are then forced to go onto this gauntlet of a conveyor belt in which we face off against several different enemy encounters. Now we're going to face off against all of them all right in a row in quick succession, and we don't have time in between to breathe or switch our characters out or use items or anything, so we're just going to be fighting one enemy after another, and so it is a little bit rough. What you want to do for this particular fight, or for all these things, is you want to use a bunch of full screen attacks. Now the best thing to use for all of this in general is going to be light attacks. So ideally you bring characters that have lightning attacks just so you can guarantee you can take care of these. So full screen attacks is ideally what you want. So Chrono with Lightning 2 is okay, otherwise his Luminaire skill is really good, so if you have Chrono maxed out, that's a really good ability to use. Ideally you just give Chrono some magic to make that good, some magic capsules, feed him that. Same thing with Robo. Robo at max level also has Electrocute, that's a really good ability, however it does require a lot of magic stat on Robo in order for it to be good. Overall, I'd say the best character is definitely going to be Magus. Magus just hits really, really hard. Even if he's not using Lightning 2, his Lightning 2, by the way, is better than Chrono's, but he just hits really hard. Any of his abilities will do good here. But I would say overall, Magus is the best character. Just throw a gold stud on him so he can keep attacking, but Magus is the best in this dungeon. He really shines here, you know, because he's using Lightning. Light pun. Okay, so what you can do too is if you don't finish them off with a single attack, you can also follow up with something else. In this example, I'm using Laser Spin. We actually are stuck with Robo in slot for this dungeon, and Laser Spin does terrible damage. However, it might be just enough to push all these enemies over the edge and finish them off. So my recommendation for this dungeon is put the gold stud on whoever is going to be doing most of your screen clearing. So in this case I have a gold stud on Magus. However, otherwise you can also use somebody who hits a little bit harder, like Chrono using Luminaire or Luca using Flare, for example. If you put the gold stud on them, just have them use those abilities. Even though these enemies aren't vulnerable to that particular element, in the particular case of Flare, it just does so much damage that it's fine, and it doesn't really cost that much MP if you're using the gold stud. In my particular case, these three characters are the ones who still need a lot of TP, so, you know, they're the ones who still have abilities that need to be unlocked, so I'm going to be using them for this dungeon, and I will get all of their abilities unlocked here. Now this place, by the way, this conveyor belt, just so you know, is one of the fastest places in the entire game to learn TP. You just have a lot of battles in quick succession. You don't have to run around or anything, you just face them one after another, so as long as you're doing enough screen clear where you can wipe them out, then it's super easy. It doesn't take much effort, and you get a lot of experience in TP, so it's great. It's one of the best places in the game. However, it is only available for a very limited amount of time, because once we complete this dungeon, then this will no longer be available, so you can't return here. Also, it's a little bit awkward because we have Robo stuck in slot, so if you don't need TP for him, then it makes it a little bit awkward. Although he does have Electrocute / Shock when he's at max level. That's a really good ability to use on these guys too. But yeah, seriously, if you have like 2 or 3 minutes to spare, you can totally, and maybe even a couple ethers, whatever, you can totally level up several of your characters and give them a whole bunch of TP. This is a great place to do it, so I'd highly recommend you do that now. I'll be showing that later on in this video, though. So next, continuing on with the main quest, what you want to do is just head to the north, and you'll see that there is a bunch of these versions, otherwise known as protos, and one of them will then interact with a nearby alcove and then go inside, and this will cause it to be electrically charged, and then it will continue on towards the south, and it will go into another nearby alcove, another receptacle, and so it'll flip the switch on its own and then go inside, and this will open the nearby door. So this is a tutorial on how to open all the doors in this dungeon, because we can use Robo to do the exact same thing. Now, for most of these side quests at the end of the game, the party composition doesn't really matter that much. You can kind of do whatever you want. They give you a lot of flexibility. This side quest is actually one of the exceptions where we have Robo stuck in our slot number 1, and he's stuck there as our party leader. And this, I think this is actually for a practical reason, because we need him in order to charge him up in order to activate the doors, just like this version / proto did a moment ago. So we have to have Robo in our party to do that. So I think they locked him in slots so that we didn't like have different parties, you know, and then be unable to interact with the doors and players get confused, whatever. So they just made sure that we're guaranteed to have Robo in the party so that we can't make that mistake. Now you'll notice for this particular fight, I did swap out to have Ayla in my party, and the reason is because there was just one of those Proto 4s, or version 4s, whatever you want to call them. But they're just pretty easy and stuff anyways. But there's a bunch of enemies I like to use full screen clear and just destroy them all. But if there's just one, then I like to use Ayla and get an elixir real quick. But yeah, I will show later on how you can get a whole bunch of those in quick succession. It's a pretty easy way to do that, very safe as well. I'm just trying to get TP on Frog though as well. But yeah, I would say overall this dungeon is the best place in the game to get elixirs. Like, you can get it super fast, and I will be showing that later on in this video, which is really great. You can charm them off of enemies in some of the previous side quests that I've showed as well. In particular, like Frog side quests, there's a bunch of enemies you could charm for elixirs there. However, they were kind of risky. They were pretty nasty. Like, some of those enemies could almost one-shot you, so it's pretty rough. Meanwhile, this one is not. They're not anywhere near as big of a threat. They do less damage and stuff, but you also have more of them, so they're very plentiful. So you can charm them very safely, and I'll be showing that later on in this video. So as you complete the combat in this section, you'll then witness a conversation in which that disembodied voice speaks to Robo, and it says some kind of disturbing things, talking about how humanity is doomed, and this is the age of machines and all this stuff. This is Skynet, like, all over again. But when the voice is done speaking, you can then interact with the nearby console, and this allows Robo to pull up some information on various aspects of this dungeon. Now, some of these things are pretty self-explanatory. You can figure them out on your own. However, a lot of these things are kind of like unspoken things, or like little subtle mechanics that are unique to this dungeon that you did not know about. So in particular, the doors are really important. Another thing that's super important to know is that we have sentinels. Now, there's a sentinel that will block your path, and it moves back and forth. It's actually like a version / proto. However, it doesn't, you can't have combat with it, so it's just an enemy that gets in your way and it bonks against you. What this console reveals, though, is that if you have more than one sentinel and you face them towards each other, that they will get stuck, and then they are disabled and they can't do anything because they're both trying to prevent the other person from moving forward. It's kind of like a cat getting stuck looking in a mirror, you know, and then being all intense about their own reflection. Kind of like that. Lastly, of course, in order to access the boss chamber, we're going to need Poyozo dolls, because that makes total sense. You know, because stuffed animals are the way of the future, as we learned from the Guru of Reason, right? You know, it's totally reasonable. So for our first objective, we want to go up through the center and take the room on the left. You'll find some laser guards here. These guys are super easy. They can be killed with just about anything. They are vulnerable to lightning, though, too, so I'd recommend that you just use like a full screen attack. Ideally, lightning 2 will take care of them immediately. You'll then find some switches behind them. The correct combination for this particular puzzle is the far left and far right one. This will open up this door here on the left, and now we need to go electrically charge it. Now, as we learned from the nearby version / proto, you want to stand inside this open alcove, and then with Robo, and he'll get electrically charged. Quickly run over before the charge runs out, stand in this alcove, this will open the nearby door. Now you can go ahead and grab the nearby Poyozo doll, and what you want to do actually is go ahead and leave the room and then re-enter, because this will make a capsule / tab appear in the place of where the Poyozo doll was. I don't know why you have to actually leave to do that, but this will then get you a speed capsule. So one of the names of the enemies here in the DS version is kind of hard to pronounce. I think it's a Deverminator. And so to deverminate something means to like have technology where you burn it in. It means where you like stress test it and you push it really hard to see like at what point it breaks, basically. So it's like a prototype, but like stress testing it to see how good it is. And that's what we're fighting. All of these enemies right here can be charmed to get elixirs if you want. However, once you defeat them, they are gone forever. If you would like to charm a whole bunch of elixirs, I'd recommend you take the dust chute to go back to that escalator, the conveyor belt, and that will allow you to... Is it an escalator if it's not going up and down? I guess it is, right? Still, or is it conveyors? Alright, I just looked it up because it was bothering me. So it's called a people mover, or another fancy word for it is actually a travelator. Ooh. So anyways, that sparkly leads to the dust chute, which takes us back to the beginning so you can use the conveyor. Otherwise, go in the nearby doorway here in the bottom right corner of the room, and this leads upstairs where there is a sparkly nearby where you can use shelters and save. Now, continuing on in this room, there is a bunch of enemies you can defeat. Not a big deal. Again, there is a whole bunch of these laser guards. They are easily defeated using lightning 2. So like I was saying, most of the enemies can kind of be ignored. Just go ahead and kill them as soon as possible, ideally using lightning attacks. However, the two enemies that you want to pay attention to where you can optionally charm them, the only two that are worth charming in this dungeon, in my opinion, are the ones that have elixirs, and those are the version 4 / proto 4s, as well as the Deverminator EX, otherwise known as Debuggists. You can charm the laser guards for high potions, otherwise known as full tonics, but they're just not worth it. Elixirs are so much more worthwhile, so just don't even bother with the laser guards. Now in this next room, there is a conveyor belt with people on it that are steadily going into machine and then screaming, so I don't know exactly what's going on, if they're getting burned alive or what. Apparently, whatever's happening to them, though, is enough time for them to feel pain, so that's kind of awful. But there is a force field in place, so we can't actually access this, and Robo is not able to do it either, so we're going to have to shut down the whole facility in order to stop all these people from being murdered. So apparently, the remaining humanity is being gathered up and disposed of by the machines, which is disturbing. Continue on to the next doorway and grab the goodies here, and then continue on back the way we came. I find this next part a little bit confusing. Here in the bottom middle of the room, there is a switch that's up high, but you can actually reach it by simply pressing A near it. Sometimes you think you even have to get it back a little bit further. It's not quite right in front of it, but then press A, Robo will jump and actually pull the switch. Inside, there's some goodies in the chest, a Mega Elixir, which is super rare, and there's also a magic capsule in the corner. To continue on with the main quest, you want to go to the far right side and then go up to the room to the north, and in the bottom right corner, there's also a strength capsule, so be sure to grab that. Then continue on to the north, where we are taunted by that voice once again. This particular room, I think just because it's so barren and it's like long and narrow, it reminds me of that underground room in Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, where you like, I think it leads from one town to another, so you can just skip all the trainers and the tall grass and stuff like that, but I like always rode my bike through it. Remember there's like an invisible item in the middle of the floor in that too, but anyway, that room reminds me of, I don't know why, that's what I always think of when I play through this game and I get to that room. I think this particular room is a great example of when I wouldn't bother to charm these guys. These are version 4s, so they do indeed have elixirs on them. However, there's just like a bunch of other combat. Again, if you want a bunch of elixirs, I would farm it on the dust chute. Like, you take those conveyors, or the Travelator. Use the Travelator enemies. You want to go ahead and use them instead. So kill the enemies in here. I would just recommend you use Lightning 2 and then continue on towards the elevator. And when you arrive in this new room, you want to pay attention to this next little cutscene. Notice that a robot then comes from this room in the top left and goes through the wall and comes over to us. This is a little hint that you can walk through there yourself. So just pay attention to that. We are going to be doing that here in just a moment. Now, there is some laser guards here, so once again, I'd recommend that you use Laser 2, or Lightning 2, because that will defeat all these guys really easily. I also find it funny that, like, these, I think they even do light damage, these lasers that the laser guards use, and yet they're vulnerable to lightning as well, which is usually the opposite. This game usually follows its rules as far as fire and water, but when it comes to light and shadow, sometimes it's a little bit backwards sometimes as far as what enemies use and what their vulnerabilities are. So the very first thing we want to do is make a shortcut by activating this nearby switch. This will deactivate the nearby laser. Then real quick, you want to go back north through that invisible passage and go over to the far left into this room where you can swing around and hit this switch to change the direction of the conveyor belt. Now real quick, before you continue onwards, you're going to walk through this passage and keep holding up on the D-pad. You'll find a hidden alcove that is like in an L shape, so go up and then left and then grab the magic capsule that is here. Go back right, then down, and then finally over to the right. And if you need more help trying to figure out exactly where that location is, just look at my bottom screen in this video. You should find it right away. Continue on to go across the conveyor belt and hit this switch here to open up the nearby alcove. Now we can finally run over here with a charged Robo in order to open that doorway. So we're going to do that here in just a little bit. There is an optional room along the way that has a bunch of goodies, so I'm going to go ahead and stop by and grab those. These version 4s, again, can be charmed to get elixirs if you want. Otherwise, you can just destroy them right away. Again, Lightning 2 is going to be your best bet for that. Otherwise, like Luminaire, ideally. Luminaire will kill them instantaneously because they're vulnerable to that, as well as the fact that it does so much damage. Fun fact for you too, by the way, the multiplier of a lot of Chrono's skills, or at least his physical skills, are pretty good. His elemental skills are pretty bad. However, Luminaire does scale very well. In fact, Magus, his ultimate ability is called Dark Matter, and I'll be unlocking it here later in this video, and it is really good. However, ironically enough, his Dark Matter skill is not as good as Luminaire. Magus has a higher magic stat, so it is nicer initially, but once Magus gets his stats maxed out, and once Chrono has enough magic, Luminaire actually pulls ahead and it becomes really, really good. So if you either give Chrono magic stats, or you just wait for a while until it beefs up and it gets good, then Luminaire actually becomes better. I find that kind of sad because it's like one of the only things that Magus is good for. You know, it's the only you had one job, Magus, just one job, and yet you know Chrono can do it better eventually, which is just sad. The only thing that's different about it is the fact that it's Shadow. You know. Anyways, go ahead and kill the guys on the far bottom left. I'd highly recommend you do this. Then go to the middle bottom and then go up through that middle area to go into the alcove to charge up Robo, and then go swing around the long way and go along the conveyor belt. As long as you hit that switch to change the direction of the conveyor belt, so it's going north, you should make it in time to step into this alcove and then go ahead and get the goodies inside. So this will allow you to open up the door, then interact with the nearby sentinel. It will then start following you. So it goes out of the room first, now it'll follow you around. And what you want to do is you want to swing kind of wide because it tends to get caught on everything. It's super annoying actually. So swing really wide, and it's not affected by the conveyor belt at all, so it doesn't really matter. But it'll steadily work your way towards the far bottom left, and you want to make this sentinel face towards the other sentinel. Like the control console there in the middle told us that once there's two sentinels facing each other, then they will neutralize each other and they will be stuck facing towards each other forever, which is dumb. Seems like they didn't program that very well, I suppose, whoever designed these robots. The one caveat to know about all this is you have to kill the Deverminator EXs, otherwise known as Debuggus, because otherwise when you bring them over here, you'll start that combat and it makes the Sentinel go back to its starting position. You have to go all the way back and grab it again. So that's why I recommended you kill all these things first. Now, once the two Sentinels are facing each other, they'll be stuck. You want to go past them and grab the Poyozo doll, and then also grab the nearby Vigilant Helm that is inside the nearby chest. Now, this is a reward that you could have gotten for completing Fiona's side quest, which I did in the last video. So that's a super good helmet, really awesome. So you can potentially save a little money with that side quest by not purchasing quite as many if you planned ahead a little bit so that you had this one from this side quest. So next, there are actually 2 boss battles in a row. However, this next one, Atropos XR, I really wanted to have Electrocute/Shock unlocked for that because it is actually fairly useful for that fight. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and unlock all the TP for my characters. This next section, like I was saying before, this conveyor belt thing of enemies, this little gauntlet of enemies, is actually like one of the best places in the game to get a bunch of TP. So you can use the nearby sparkly by going up the elevator in the door in the bottom right. You can use that to get to a sparkly, so you can use shelters so you can restore your MP. And then go into the dust chute there in the bottom right corner, and you'll fight through all these enemies again. So like I was saying earlier in the video, this conveyor belt gauntlet of enemies is only available until you defeat the boss, and then after that it's gone. Now unfortunately we do have Robo locked in slot for this party composition, so we can't change anything for this dungeon. However, this is still one of the better places in the game to get a bunch of XP and TP in particular. The reason is because there's just so many enemies in quick succession, they're all vulnerable to lightning, so as long as you have some lightning in your party, you can just destroy them super fast. But even if you don't have lightning, if you just have 2 characters use full screen attacks like Water 2 and Ice 2 or whatever, you just win. You can also use dual techs that do stuff like Antipode Bomb 3, for example. Oh man, you'll just destroy everything. But yeah, just throw a golden stud on whoever has the highest MP cost. So in this case, I'm throwing it on Magus. So he's doing most of the damage. He's using MP all the time, but that greatly reduces the MP cost, and I can just use shelters at this nearby sparkly. So I just keep going back and forth to the dust chute and do it over and over again to level up my characters. So what I'm doing is I am locked in slot with Robo, but he's one of the characters I need TP on anyway, so it doesn't really matter, whatever. But then meanwhile, my other 2 characters are the 2 characters that still need TP. And you can tell by going to your tech list and seeing who still has grayed out abilities. And what we're trying to do is just unlock all of the remaining single techs. When you're looking at your tech list, it can be a little bit confusing because it doesn't have it just has the name of it and it's like grayed out. It shows how much TP you need to unlock the next one in line. However, you don't know how many more there are to unlock after that one and stuff too, so you're not entirely sure how many techs you have left. But one easy way to tell, by the way, is just know that each character has 8 single techs, and that's what we're trying to do, is unlock all 8 of them for all of our characters. So if you go to your tech list and you scroll down to the bottom, you see a gray title, then you know that you have 1 more to unlock. So you go through your single techs, after that it switches to dual techs, so just right above that, you can just count them up. If you have 5, for example, and you have 1 that's grayed out, that means so you'll see 6 total, but the one of them is grayed out, then that means you have 3 more left to unlock. So that's a way you can do that process of elimination. Also, though, too, another way you can do that, it's a little bit more complicated, is you can just look up technique lists online. So go search on Google or whatever for Chrono Trigger technique list, and then you'll see a big list of them, and it has their names and stuff. Just be aware, too, that the names are different between the Super Nintendo and the DS version, so hopefully the website you're looking at will have both names on there for you. So on screen, you can see me checking the tech list for Frog. He has unlocked Frog Squash, which is his final ability, and then he has no more grayed out abilities after that. So meanwhile, Robo still has Electrocute, which is his final ability. It's actually not even that much TP left. And then meanwhile, Magus still needs quite a bit. So I'm going to just go ahead and level those guys up. It doesn't take long. But now, because Frog is maxed out, and I'm not even using him doing anything with him for these fights anyways, I'm going to go ahead and swap him out with Ayla so I can charm some elixirs. Now, charming with Ayla can be kind of painful because as she's like waiting for her to charm and then she fails or whatever, and you try again, then meanwhile your characters are just getting wailed on by the enemy, so it can be kind of frustrating. But one easy way you can do this too, and especially in this kind of fight is like a really good example, is just go ahead and charm one of the enemies, and then after that just go ahead and immediately follow up with a full screen attack. So in this case I'm using Magus for that. So I just queue up a charm, whether it works or not, doesn't matter, and then I just go ahead and use a full screen clear. I need to kill all the enemies anyways to get TP, but because it's happening so fast, because my characters can go immediately and the enemies, it takes a little bit before they start going, then as a result I never take any damage. But yeah, I would say like especially if there's more than 2 enemies, I would recommend just using full screen clear. Otherwise, if there's like 2 enemies or less, then I would just go ahead and charm both of them because you might as well. It doesn't really take that long. You're probably not going to take too much damage in that amount of time. But yeah, I would highly recommend you grind here just a little bit. You don't have to do it. It's like however long you want to spend here, but this whole process of just like charming immediately followed by an attack is really fast. You don't take any damage. It's just great. You get a bunch of really good items. It's just super, super powerful. By the way, too, like if you get enough of these, you just need enough where you can do the last boss like pretty well. You just save before the last boss, whatever, but then you can just use elixirs all day long instead of using other healing abilities. Like for example, like just take Robo for example. His Cure Beam is like okay. You know, you give him enough magic tabs or whatever, and it gets pretty good, but it still doesn't heal everybody completely, at least until the end game anyways. But, you know, when his magic stat is completely maxed out. But, so instead of using Cure Beam, you just have him use an elixir instead, right? It just takes his turn just like it normally would, but for single target healing, Robo is way better off using elixirs than he is using Cure Beam. Makes sense? It heals everybody completely, restores their MP, so if you're like, say you're using somebody else, Magus or Ayla or Luca or whatever, and they're using their really high hitting ability that costs 20 MP, then rather than giving them like a gold stud, you can give them like the prismatic spectacles, so they do 50% more damage. And then, you know, Robo's just using elixirs on them and it restores their MP, so you don't need the gold stud on them to reduce the MP cost, because when you're healing them, you're restoring their MP anyway. So anyways, if you can just get enough elixirs, you can make your healers super overpowered. It's really strong. So yeah, this is the fastest way to get elixirs in the entire game, in my opinion. It's just really, really good. I mean, other than there is a shop in the DS version, but only after you've done a very extensive side quest, and that does sell elixirs. But that's towards the end of the game. That's after a lot of effort and stuff too. So if you're playing on an older version of the game, or you don't want to go through that side quest, this is definitely the fastest place. But again, this whole conveyor belt is locked after you defeat the final boss, which I'm about to do here in just a little bit. So something to know about Magus is I've talked before many times about how his multipliers and his abilities are a lot better, and one comment to make about that is all of his shadow abilities are better. Like his Dark Mist is just a little bit more expensive than his Fire 2, Lightning 2, and Ice 2. However, it does like 30% more damage, so it only costs just a little bit more MP, but the amount of damage he gets out of it is just better. Just know that all of his shadow abilities are better than his non-shadow abilities for him. He does more damage with them than anything else. So even though these enemies are all vulnerable to lightning specifically, that's what they take more damage from, but still, his shadow abilities do so much more damage that they're better than Lightning 2. So once you get something past Lightning 2, you're actually better off with using his shadow abilities instead. Now I'm showing that I have Electrocute, otherwise known as Shock, unlocked for Robo, so I know I'm finally done with everything I need to do here. Now you can totally go through and do more. I actually am low on MP with Magus, so I can go upstairs and use a shelter here to restore his MP, and I could just do some more. Now, he actually needs like 500 more TP. I'm not too worried about it. Like, honestly, I'm not going to be using him too much here for the rest of the game, other than some side quests and stuff. There's actually a whole other area in the Lost Sanctum in particular. I'm going to be using him a ton there, but other than that, I'm not actually going to be using Magus very much moving forward. I mean, I'm going to be using him just to unlock his TP, but I probably should have just stayed and done the conveyor belt a little bit more, just a couple more times, and just finished him off and gotten all the TP he needed. It probably would have taken like 4 or 5 more. All at the same time, I was trying not to get my guy super, super strong. Now, next up, right after the Sparkly, we actually have a boss battle in an area we've already been to, so what I recommend doing for this is put the Haste Helm on Robo, would help him the most. And then as far as armor, just you want the highest physical damage you can, or highest physical resist you can get. So currently I have the Moonbeam armor, is really, really good. And then lastly, for his accessory, I'd recommend the Golden Stud would be really good for this. Now for this boss battle, we are fighting only with Robo, so the other characters don't actually matter at all. However, as far as dialogue, it's all pretty similar. However, the two characters I think that have the most interesting dialogue are Luca and Frog. So go ahead and throw them in your party if you like, just to have more interesting dialogue, and then proceed forward to fight this first boss. This battle is extremely simple. There's not really too much to it, and honestly, she doesn't even have that much HP, so it's not really much of a problem. One of the first things to know is that she can do some shadow and fire damage. However, they're not really that big a deal, so as long as you have enough HP to survive it, it's not really that big a deal. So I'd more focus on HP than I would magic defense for this particular fight. Physical is going to be your bigger thing that you want to protect against, so just high armor items is really what you're going to want in general. For an accessory, you can totally put on like the barrier ring or something to reduce the damage from shadow and fire if you want to, although I think overall the gold stud is more important because she takes significant damage from magical, and the best magical ability that Robo has is going to be electrocute/shock. This is the final ability that he unlocks though, so it's unlikely that a lot of you have access to it. I actually did farm for it there towards the end. Otherwise, unless you're using him throughout the game quite a bit, then he would have already had that unlocked a while ago. But yes, does a significant damage. It does cost a lot. It's very expensive, so the gold stud will definitely reduce that cost quite a bit. Otherwise, if you don't have that ability, then just use rapid fire, just whatever your most expensive tech is, basically. Other than proximity bomb, I don't think that's very good. You're better off using rapid fire fist. It does the most damage after that, otherwise known as Uzi punch. But yes, as far as her attacks go, the most damaging attacks overall are going to actually be physical. She just does more physical attacks than she does magical, even though the magical ones do hurt pretty bad, but the physical attacks is more what you're worried about. Her most scary ability that she has is actually her Robo Tackle. What that does is instead of doing a set amount of damage, it will actually just reduce your HP by 50%, similar to the Iron Spheres that the Golems and Dalton use in previous fights that we fought before. So that's actually the most scary thing, but otherwise everything else isn't too bad. Robo actually has a very high amount of stamina and HP at this point, so a lot of these attacks shouldn't be that big a deal. In fact, at this point, most of Robo's abilities will do over 1,000 damage to her, which is a lot. She only has 6,000 HP, so just like, 6 turns or more, and she's totally toast. So it's not that big a deal. Kind of, if you're worried about the, some of those magical attacks or that Robo Tackle in particular, you can throw a Cure Beam in there to heal Robo up. But again, because it only does 50% of his HP, it'll keep doing less and less as the battle progresses. So it's kind of like, you just got to make sure he has enough HP so that if she switches to one of her magical attacks, that it doesn't kill him is kind of really what you're worried about. And then also just making sure you have enough HP to survive her death counter. Now, once you have defeated her, then it looks like her memory has been restored and she's no longer all evil and stuff, but she is dying. Now, if you have Luca in your party, then she will rush over and try to repair Atropos in the last minute before she kicks the bucket. However, she doesn't quite make it in time, so then she then gives us the ribbon, which you gives to Robo, which is a permanent upgrade for him, which boosts his speed by 3 and his magic defense by 10. This is an amazing upgrade. This covers all of Robo's weakest points in particular, so as far as from a stat perspective, it's one of his only things that was kind of bad about him is the fact that he was slow and his magic defense was low. So this covers both of those things, so now he's pretty good. It actually makes a really big upgrade for him, and he's actually one of my fastest characters now, which is pretty crazy. This is also why I was saying earlier in the walkthrough, you don't want to boost his speed above 13, because 16 speed is the max, and so if you can do up to 13, but you do any more than that, then you will waste this potential upgrade, and those speed capsules could have been spent on other characters instead. Now, just a little while ago in this video, I did unlock the remaining single techs for Robo and Frog, and what that means is there's a few more dual techs that are available for them. So I'm just going to do some quick combat, as long as I'm doing these anyways. I'm going to go ahead and destroy all these laser guards. There's a whole bunch of them. Remember that they are vulnerable to lightning, and because we have the electrocute/shock ability unlocked now with Robo, I can do significant damage to them and kill them really easily. So that will also give me this combat between these guys. I learned the dual techs between Frog and Luca, as well as Robo and Luca. The last remaining ability that I haven't unlocked yet, it's now a combination between Robo's final single tech and Chrono's. So, I'm going to combine them real quick and use them for this combat. Again, same thing, use Electrocute once more. Go ahead and finish off all of these laser guards. This will learn me the dual tech Mega Volt, otherwise called Super Volt in older versions of the game, which is the highest damage electric full screen attack that we have access to. Unfortunately, it's not that much better than Luminaire, but it is still really, really good. So just know that if you're wanting to really just ramp out some serious electric damage, you can use Mega Volt, and it's just really, really good. But yes, now for my particular playthrough, I now have unlocked all of the dual techs in the entire game, and all the triple techs except for the ones that are gained through accessories. I will be showing how to do that later on in the walkthrough. It's kind of a low priority for me, because I honestly feel like those abilities are just not very good, because I would much rather be using like a gold stud or, a prismatic spectacles in that slot instead. So I just feel like those remaining triple techs are just kind of bad, honestly, in my opinion. So for this upcoming boss, the team composition I'd highly recommend would either be like Robo, Ayla, and Luca, or Robo, Ayla, and Frog would be the characters that I'd recommend for this as far as the best combination. This boss has 3 different types of attacks. It's most noticeably at early on is it has a lot of shadow damage. So what I'd recommend you do is go ahead and use the black plate and then put the black vest. Now in my case I actually have multiple black plates, I have tons of them. You can put the black vest on your next characters and then finally just put like high magic resist on the last one would be the best way to take care of this. Also, if you have on one of your guys anyways, you can also use the Dark Helm, would be a really good one. That reduces shadow damage by 50%, so I'd highly recommend you put that on either Robo or one of your other guys, so in this case, Frog. Now another thing you can do too that would help a lot is this boss also has some pretty nasty status effects that it can use as well. It has Omnilock, which will make it so you can't use any techs or items, and it also has Chaos that it can apply to you, which makes you confused so that you attack your allies. Both those things are kind of annoying, so you're going to want some status protection. The easiest way to do this is to wear the Vigilant hat, which will give you status immunity. You can also wear the Nova armor, is another one that does that as well. So even though it's a lower end armor, it still provides status immunity, so that's something else you can do. Otherwise though too, another thing you can do is wear Shala's amulet. That's an accessory that gives you status immunity as well, and that's pretty good too. But I would say overall, at the very least, as long as you have one of your characters has status immunity, then you can then use a Panacea/heal with that character to get everybody else fixed up. So you don't have to have status immunity on all your characters, but it's kind of like, you know, you could boost your damage or boost your healing, whatever, by having different items, but if you have status immunity, then that's a turn that you're not wasting trying to get everybody recovered again, you know what I mean? So, or even multiple turns. So it's up to you to decide which way you want to do it. Even though it's a very defensive posture, like it's still a really good thing. And I don't know, it makes you more offensive overall by being defensive because you're not wasting time trying to recover from that. And then meanwhile, the boss is hitting you with other things. So like, yes, you could wear black plate, but instead if you have something that gives you status immunity, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. The third most important thing to keep in mind for this boss is just simply magical defense in general. This boss does have additional damage that is magical in nature. It's not any set element, it's like non-elemental, but it does magic damage, so magic resistance will resist that better. So if you have a bunch of magic defense in your characters, that can reduce the damage of that as well. However, in order for that particular strategy to be viable, it depends on which strategy you're using to fight the boss. What I'm going to be doing for right now is I'm going to show the normal, like typical strategy for this boss, and then I'll show other ones after that. Now, as soon as the battle starts, you'll immediately realize the gimmick of this fight, which is the fact that the boss has displays. These monitors in the background will heal the boss for 1,000 HP each, and they take turns pretty often, actually, as well, which is awful. So they just do a lot of healing. It's just crazy. Like, if you have all 3 of them up and running all the time, it's not impossible to kill the boss, but it's very difficult. You have to be a very high level to even accomplish that. So you want to take out the displays to make it so that the boss stops healing so that you can kill her. However, just know that if you take out all of the displays, that the Mother Brain will then gain another attack, which does about 100 damage-ish of magical damage. It's just an elemental neutral attack, and it hits the whole party. And then the damage of that goes up by 100 every time she uses it. So it just keeps ramping up and up until eventually you can't handle it anymore and it kills you. So what a lot of people will do for this fight is they'll just kill 2 displays and leave 1 display up, and then this way you can avoid that ramping attack and you can just focus on the boss and just keep hitting her over and over again. You'll steadily whittle her down until eventually she's defeated. It's not really that bad. One other quick comment though about the displays is you can charm them to get elixirs. Now elixirs, we have been getting them throughout the dungeon as well though, and a lot of those enemies I think are significantly easier and faster, so you can totally do it during this boss battle if you want to, but I think it makes more sense just to be charming everything else. But as long as you are here, I would still recommend that you bring Ayla and charm them anyways, because we want to charm the boss, because the boss can be charmed for a blue plate. This is a super valuable item, so I highly recommend you do that at the very least, and as long as we're charming the boss, we might as well charm the displays for elixirs anyway. Now in the last video I completed Fiona's side quest, and for charming Melfix, you can get a black plate from that, which is the, so this boss has the blue plate, the last boss from the previous side quest has the black plate. So anyways, I now have 2 black plates and 1 black vest in my inventory as far as from regular storyline. I actually have additional black plates than that because I won them in the Arena of Ages, but most people won't have that. But anyways, if you're following along with me and you don't have access to the Arena of Ages, you still should have up to 2 black plates and 1 black vest, which means most of this boss's attacks are all shadow anyways, so the boss literally cannot hurt us. The only other attack that she has is the reprogram ability, which will cause confusion, applies the chaos debuff to one character, which is kind of awful. You can keep using panaceas to try and slash heals to remove that, which is kind of annoying. Otherwise, you put status immunity items on your characters, you can then nullify that attack as well, and that's pretty good. But that's pretty much it. This boss is like super easy mode using this method, so just having Shadow Absorption, killing 2 of the displays, and then charming everything with Ayla is like great. So that's just awesome. After that, you can start doing damage to her. Now what I'd recommend you do, just do your hardest hitting single target attacks. You can use Rapid Fire Fist, you can use Aerial Strike, otherwise known as Leap Slash, you can use Triple Kick, and you can also use, there's a dual tech between Ayla and Frog that's pretty good called Drop Down. It's actually a very nice ability. It hits really hard. I actually was surprised with this playthrough. I've used it a couple times before, but I was surprised at how strong it is. It's just a really good ability. Now, this boss only has 5,000 HP, which is not that much. So you can kill her pretty fast regardless of like which abilities you're using. As long as you're doing like over 1,000 damage with each one of your characters, you will guarantee do more damage than like a single display. So Robo is locked in slot for this particular dungeon, but everybody else you can choose whatever you want. You're just looking for somebody who has like a higher MP cost single tech, and then otherwise people that have a single target dual tech is what you're looking for. So ideally you can do something like 1,000 damage at least per character, but in my case, Drop Down does like 3,000 damage, so it's really good. Now another strategy is to kill the displays on purpose and just deal with it, which is kind of rough. However, it is definitely doable, and I will show how to do that. If you have the Dark Helm, you can wear that on one of your characters, which will have shadow damage. It is only wearable by dudes though, and otherwise for all your other armor, you want to try and wear things that increase your magic defense as much as possible. So you can wear like the Flea Bustier in particular is like our best magic defense item. Otherwise the Barrier Ring / Wall Ring would be the next best one, which is okay. Otherwise, the big thing we're worried about for this fight is going to be the status effects. Now, this boss can apply confusion, but also the lock status. So the Clarity Cap, for example, will prevent confusion if you don't have, the Vigilant Helms that we got from Fiona's side quest by purchasing them from the nuns in Fiona's Shrine. So if you haven't completed that side quest yet, then some of these items, we've got some of these like on the Mountain of Woe, for example, so that's a nice way to deal with that. And also the Memory Cap will prevent lock. The lock status effect will prevent you from using techs and also items, and I think sometimes it even lasts for the entirety of the battle, so it's really awful. So if that happens and you do happen to get a bunch of your characters locked or your entire party, you're pretty much just using auto attacks and hoping for the best, so it's really awful. Another thing you can do too is we do have the Shallows Amulet as an accessory, and that's a really good one as well that prevents all status effects. That's a really good one. As long as you have one character that can use Panacea / heal on everybody else, you're kind of okay. Another thing you can do too is wear Tabin's Helm, and because that one will also give +10 to magic defense for Luca. So it's a really good way you can have that slot give her a little bit more magic defense instead. So for this particular strategy, what I'm going to show is just charming the boss to get that blue plate, because that's the most valuable thing here, and then I'll just ignore the displays entirely, because I've gotten enough elixirs for the rest of it. So for this strategy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just destroy everything and kill the boss. Now, something to realize about the boss, which is kind of funny, is that it only has 5,000 HP. The reason this fight takes so long is because the boss keeps getting healed. So if we destroy the displays and we just attack the boss, it doesn't really take that long. Like, think about that. Like, a lot of our attacks are doing like 1,000 damage, right? At least. Some of them are doing 2,000 or more. So if we can do like, say, 3,000 damage to the boss and do that 2 times, we win. It doesn't matter that the boss counterattacks and has this nasty attack that does 100 damage. Ooh, like who cares? It doesn't matter. And yes, it's going to keep ramping up, but as long as we kill the boss before it gets out of control, it doesn't matter. The boss does not have very much HP. So here I'm using a full screen attack that's going to kill the displays just to get them taken care of, but also I want to use something that does good damage to the boss. So this is a very high MP cost spell between Luca and Ayla. Inferno is reliant upon Ayla's magic stats, so because I've been pumping a bunch of magic into her, it's a really good ability. It's one of the strongest attacks in the entire game. Single target, multi-target, doesn't matter, it's just good for everything. Super strong. So I queue up Robo's highest MP cost spell as well, and I end up doing a total of just shy of 4,000 damage, and then the boss goes ahead and uses that nasty upgrade ability. However, it doesn't matter. It didn't really hit me that hard. I have magic resistance to reduce that damage some, so that it doesn't do very much, and then I can just go ahead and follow up with anything. Any of my techs, any of my single techs, honestly, will kill her, because she only has like 1,000 HP left. It's nothing. It doesn't matter. So yeah, if you're not really interested in like charming all the displays and dragging it out like I did the first time, then that's a good strategy for you too, that you can still get the blue plate, but you're wiping out that boss really, really fast, really easy. So next I'm going to show what I would call a bad combat with this boss. This is me not wearing any good like status protection gear. I don't have any shadow absorption stuff, but I do have like Frog as a more defensive character on my team. So I have 2 healers now. I have Robo and Frog. So if the boss dishes out some damage, I can counter it. So this is, if I'm not countering the boss with any of my equipment and I'm just relying only on my healing, here's what this would look like. Now this is going to require some panacea / heals because my character is going to get omni-locked and confused, which is kind of rough. So fix any negative status effects as soon as possible, and otherwise just single target the boss down. Now one fun dual tech that I haven't used this entire walkthrough, it's just so impractical, is a lot of these proximity attacks don't really work very well. So here is Cyclone Sweep, otherwise called Max Cyclone in older versions of the game. Robo happens to be close to the boss, so that actually works out, but like seriously, in most combat situations, those kind of attacks just aren't good. I don't understand, like, same thing with Magus, he has Black Hole, and it's just not very useful because typically enemies just aren't close enough for it to even be viable. Also, I think Black Hole in particular is a bad ability because it sucks up enemies, and so they don't have, they don't give any XP when they're defeated if you use Black Hole, which is just one little aside. I hate that ability. I'm just whining about it. Proximity abilities in this game are just awful. Most of the status effect abilities that you have are bad, except for Hypno Wave. Hypno Wave is good, but everything else is just bad for negative effects to apply on enemies. And then all the proximity abilities are really bad. But yeah, you get the idea. Like there I used, triple raid / triple attack, and that's a pretty decent attack with these guys. It doesn't cost very much MP, so it's not as damaging as some other character combinations and other abilities. There's other triple attacks that just do more damage than that ability. Pretty decent still. So once you've defeated her, you will then get the Teraton Arm and the Crisis Arm. These are two of Robo's like best arms in the game. There actually is one more potentially that you can get in the Dimensional Vortex at the end of the game. That's an upgrade for Robo as well. However, both of these are pretty darn good. The Crisis Arm in particular can be really disgusting if you know how to use it properly. Yeah, the summarized difference between these is the Teraton Arm is just like a regular arm. It's just good. It's just good damage, whatever. It doesn't do anything special. Meanwhile, the Crisis Arm makes some abilities better and some abilities worse, but it's also very dependent on your current HP. So it can be really, really amazing, or it can be absolute garbage. So it really just depends. But if you can work with it, you can just absolutely destroy some boss battles. Really, really strong. Super good item. But I'll explain more about that in the next video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this and found it helpful, be sure to throw a like on it, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content just like this. As always, stay awesome, have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.